Will we have the Geno Smith show again in Detroit this year?
You are Locked On NFL Crossover, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
What's happening, everybody? Here we go. It's our Thursday edition of Locked On Lions with Matt Dery and Locked On Seahawks with Corbin Smith. It's the Thursday crossover brought to you by our friends at PrizePicks. Go to prizepicks.com/LockedOnNFL and use code all lowercase LockedOnNFL to win $50 instantly when you play $5. 3-0 Seahawks at the 2-1 Lions. We got to wait until Monday night for this matchup as the Lions and Seahawks get reacquainted again. Thanks for making us your first listen and checking us out wherever you get your podcasts. Corbin, excitement in Seattle, right? Seahawks off to a 3-0 start. I know they've boat raced some bad quarterbacks, but what's been the vibe there right now?
Well, the vibe is as good as it can be right now because this team has given up 14.3 points per game on defense. And listen, you can point out the quarterback competition. Obviously, not seeing Tua Tagovailoa last week was a huge advantage for them. Skylar Thompson not anywhere close to the same stratosphere as a quarterback, but still, this defense has been one of the best at generating pressure. They're blitzing less than 19% of the time, so they're doing it with their front four, getting after quarterbacks. They have not been giving up explosive plays in the secondary. Their linebackers are playing well. The excitement revolves around that defense. And then on offense, the offensive line, it feels like this is just a broken record every year. Their offensive line is always one of the worst in pass protection. But Geno Smith says, I don't care. I'm still going to lead one of the most efficient offenses in the NFL, even with that pressure. So the excitement is definitely tangible in Seattle. They've got a lot of weapons on offense. They got a quarterback that fans are finally starting to give the due that he deserves. I mean, he's been awesome the last 2+ years for them under center. And now the defense, after being 25th in the league last year in points allowed, the defense has caught up, at least at this point, which makes this a dangerous football team, even if they have had an easy schedule up to this point. Winning games is not easy in the NFL, regardless of who you're hosting.
Let's get to the Seattle storylines. We'll get to Detroit's in a second. We'll get you the keys, obviously, as well, and find out what Corbin thinks of this one and what I think of this one here on the Thursday crossover. So what's the talk in Seattle? You mentioned 3-0 and excitement, but what else comes to mind when you look at storylines for this week?
Unfortunately, both these teams are going to be sharing this going into this game. There's concerns about injuries going into this game, particularly on the defensive line, where the Seahawks would like to be full strength going against Jared Goff and Jahmyr Gibbs and company. They would like to have all of their horses up front, but right now, we don't know if Leonard Williams is going to be able to play. He exited early on Sunday against the Dolphins with a rib injury. Byron Murphy II, their exciting first-round pick, has a hamstring injury. Who knows about his availability? And Uchenna Nwosu's missed the first 3 games. There's a chance he could be ready this week. They're expecting him to practice heading into this week. How he looks in the practice field is going to dictate whether he plays in this game. But right there's 3 huge names on this defensive line that could all be out in this game. And even on the offensive side of the ball, Ken Walker III's missed the last 2 games. They've been able to get by with Zach Charbonnet, who's played really well. But Ken Walker III brings a different juice. And in a game like this against one of the top teams in the NFC, the Seahawks are hoping that Ken Walker III is going to be able to play in this game, which would give them a little bit more juice in the backfield and as a receiver out of the backfield and really bring this offense together. And they're going to need to score some points if they're missing some of those pieces on the defensive side of the football.
Tell me about right tackle. You know, we've talked a lot about this on the show. Aiden Hutchinson is going to be facing now 4 consecutive backup right tackles or just backup tackles, period. Remember, in week 1 against the Rams, he went up against second and third stringers there. What's the update at right tackle for the Seahawks?
Well, they brought Jason Peters in for a free agent visit yesterday, if that tells you where things stand right now.
Goodness.
Abraham Lucas, look, he is eligible to come off the PUP list after this next week, but what Mike McDonald told me did not sound like that was going to be happening. They're like, well, we're not going to put a timeline on it. I'm hearing mid-season probably at earliest till he's back. George Fant was just put in injured reserve last week. He was signed to be the replacement for Abraham Lucas early this season. Now he's not playing. If there is a silver lining here for Seahawk fans, though, Stone Forsythe has been pretty good the last couple games. And when you go back to last year when Seattle went into Detroit and won and put up a lot of points again, Stone Forsythe started that at right tackle really well in that football game for the most part. So can he carry the momentum from the last two games? The fact that he's already played well at Ford Field, there's going to be growing confidence there. They're lucky they have a guy that has started more than 10 games in the NFL. That is their third string right tackle that is available for them and has some upside. The run game is his biggest detriment, but in pass protection, he's been solid. They got to hope he stays healthy, though, because after that, Mike Jarrell, sixth rounder coming from Division II, they've had him as a healthy scratch, has not even suited up yet because they don't think he's ready. And then McLennan Curtis has never played an offensive regular season snap either. So there are depth concerns there. They have to hope Forsythe not only holds up, but he stays healthy.
You mentioned before about Geno Smith playing so well. Look, Lion fans, the last 2 years, and this is bizarre scheduling, it's now 3 consecutive years. You and I have done these crossover where Seattle has come to Detroit. It's kind of crazy. And Geno just has carved them up. That was under Shane Waldron. Mike McDonald, who a lot of Lion fans and certainly Michigan fans know from his days with the Wolverines. How's the staff? And it seems to be, everything seems to be clicking right now, right?
Yeah, this staff, there's obviously Ryan Grubb being a first-time NFL coordinator. He's ran into some of those first-time coordinator issues here. Last week, for example, they ran 3rd and 15 at their own 6-yard line. They went into empty with the offensive line that they have. And not surprisingly, Geno Smith was immediately under siege and trying to avoid a sack. Threw the ball to the running back, Zach Charbonnet, bounced off his hands. It's intercepted. It's been fluky picks like that. Otherwise, Geno Smith has been phenomenal. Among the league leaders in completion percentage. He's in the top 3 in passing yards. He has been fantastic at getting the ball out quickly with that offensive line, avoiding sacks. A lot of that has also been on Ryan Grubb, though. He has done a really good job of being able to help his quarterback out. And he's putting defenses, this is what Shane Waldron could never do. He is putting defenses in the looks that he wants, and that's why they've been able to get a couple of huge touchdowns to DK Metcalf against busted coverages the last 2 weeks. You're seeing that Mad Hatter a little bit with Ryan Grubb, that he is in the press box and he is dialing things up. And so got a lot to learn, but he has had a really good start to his time as the play caller in Seattle. And the defensive staff, Mike McDonald, I mean, he's come in and immediately turned this into a top 5 defense overnight, because of his scheming and just his overall coaching ability, mixing and matching personnel groupings. So this is going to be their first real litmus test. But up to this point, the coaches have done a really good job of meeting expectations, exceeding them to this point, and getting their guys ready to play. And that's why they're 3-0.
Thursday crossover brought to you by PrizePicks. Matt Dery, Locked on Lions. Corbin Smith, Locked on Seahawks. Coming up next, let's talk about the Lions a little bit and the biggest storylines coming out of Detroit. Corbin mentioned injuries in Seattle. That's also one of the storylines in Detroit. We'll do that coming up next. Locked on Lions, Locked on Seahawks for this Thursday crossover, brought to you by Gametime as well. Gametime app's the best. You looking for tickets for the game? You want to check out the Lions and Seahawks? Maybe you're coming from Seattle, or maybe you're a Lions fan that's like, hey, I got to be there Monday night for this madness that is going to be Monday Night Football and some kind of crowd. Well, get your tickets on the Gametime app. Gametime has a new feature called Gametime Picks that makes getting tickets for your favorite live events even easier. Gametime Picks filters out the fluff to show you only incredible deals on great seats, so you don't have to waste time searching through thousands of tickets. Tiger fans as well. You want to check out the Tigers the rest of this weekend, do so at the Gametime app. They are the best. Best thing I love about the Gametime app is the seat views. You get that panoramic seat view from your seat in the app. Before you buy, you know exactly where you are. Take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Gametime. Download the Gametime app, create an account, use the code LOCKEDONNFL for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account, redeem the code LOCKEDON NFL for $20 off. Download Gametime today. What time is it? Gametime. Locked on Lions, Locked on Seahawks. Big one on Monday night. Matt and Corbin are with you. It's the Thursday crossover presented by PrizePicks. Corbin, you mentioned the Seahawk injuries. Lions are coming in here very banged up Monday night. Marcus Davenport, the edge rusher for them, opposite of Aiden Hutchinson, likely done for the year with an elbow injury. Derek Barnes just somewhat went on IR. He's been an outside linebacker / edge It's been an important piece of this defense. So he's going to be out for a while. What's going to be interesting is Frank Ragnow, one of the best centers in the game, has a torn pec muscle, and he wants to play. You're making the face, Corbin, for those watching on YouTube, right? Like, what a monster. Wants to play through a torn pec. Without him, the Lions offense just is not the same. They missed him for a couple games last year. He's so valuable. So that's, kind of similar to you guys. That's going to be kind of a storyline for Monday night.
Yeah, when you look at the Lions offense to this point, and obviously you're going to have a chance to elaborate on this, but I've gotten to watch a few of their games up to this point, and the run game has been really effective for the most part, but it hasn't felt like the passing game has gotten a humming yet, and there's some new pieces in the offensive line, and if you're going to be missing Frank Ragnow in this game, look, if he plays in this game, like, that dude deserves the Iron Man award, because torn pectoral muscle as an offensive lineman, when you're going to be pushing guys around, like, that is one of the driving muscles to be able to do that. So if he's able to do that, it's going to be really impressive, maybe even borderline insane that he would be trying to play with that. But it does feel like this offense is still trying to find their footing a little bit with some of the new pieces, some of the losses they have on the offensive line. Jonah Jackson leaving, for example, the receiving room. Josh Reynolds, it feels like maybe they're missing him as that third target.
They are.
What are you seeing so far from this offense?
No, you bring up a great point. It's funny. They poo-pooed the Josh Reynolds signing with Denver. I'm not going to say they dissed him, but I think the offer that they made was not as competitive as Denver's. And I think they felt like Jamison Williams would take that next step as the number 2 next to Amon-Ra St. Brown. They love Khalif Raymond, and they figured they had enough young guys, including a 7th round pick from 2 years ago, Antoine Green, Donovan Peoples-Jones, that they would survive. And it turns out Green gets hurt in the preseason. DPJ was terrible in August and now is on the practice squad. And they don't have that third or fourth receiver that they're really confident in right now. And Reynolds and Goff had a very, very good relationship and a good kind of kinship on the field. So that's missed. Sam Laporta has not been able to get going. It's kind of similar to what's going on around the league. Mark Andrews hasn't started fast. Travis Kelce's been on a milk carton. So they got to get Laporta going a little bit. And Goff just has not been as sharp. On a big third down against Arizona this past Sunday, he delivered to St. Brown to ice the game, as well as a rollout, as we like to call it, Vanilla Vic, when Goff starts running. But otherwise, you're right. There's just not been that, huge, 300, 400-yard passing game. And I think the Lions feel like hopefully Monday night on the fast track, their turf, loud crowd, that Goff kind of gets it going. I mean, we've seen the last few years, Lions offense hasn't been the issue against the Seahawks. It's been stopping Geno in that Seahawk attack. So you're right. You bring up a good point. It just has not been there in terms of the passing game, but running the football this past Sunday, they absolutely poleaxed the Cardinals, and you expected a steady diet of Montgomery and Gibbs again.
And it's interesting. One of the storylines that I'm sure that you have talked a little bit on your show about, you don't have to worry about Pete Carroll at this point, but Pete Carroll's defenses could not stop Jared Goff the last couple of years. They couldn't stop anybody most of the time, and that's why Pete Carroll's not coaching here anymore. But Mike McDonald is the defensive coordinator in Baltimore last season. It was the worst game Detroit had all of last year in that game. Where does that fit into the Lions in terms of how they're preparing for this week when Mike McDonald's defense, he faced it, but absolutely the worst offensive game that they had last year. Now you're combining that with what Geno Smith in this offense has done at Ford Field the last couple of years.
I love that point you brought up. It was a bad game and certainly was very schemed. Look, that Ravens defense was good against everybody last year, but especially against Detroit. You're right about that. I don't know if the Lions are going to think about that, but I think it's something in the back of their minds. They're going, all right, McDonald has schemed us before, and it worked. I love what you said earlier, and I watched a little bit of your game a couple weeks ago against Denver. I love the showing of the blitz backing off. I think that the looks that McDonald does, and this is similar to when he was at Michigan, it confuses people. Goff is usually very good, and again, Ragnow too, if he's in the game, at pointing out where they're going in communication. This offensive line is as good as there is in the league. Kevin Zeitler comes over from Baltimore to replace Jonah Jackson. Has been very solid at right guard. But this will be a test, certainly, because of, like you said, what kind of scheme and look McDonald comes up with. There was a lot. Todd Bowles blitzed him a little bit a couple weeks ago. Goff and the Lions offense with the short stuff is usually good against the blitz, and a blitz buster has been Jahmyr Gibbs the last couple of years. So the cat and mouse between these two staffs, Ben Johnson and Mike McDonald, is going to be fun to watch.
And most importantly, the defensive side of the ball. As you've mentioned to me, I don't know what it is. Geno Smith just seems like Ford Field is his second home. Like, he loves playing there. And even early in his career, when he was not the player he is now, he's just had success at Ford Field. And obviously those Lions teams were not near as good as the ones that have been making the postseason like last year and nearly made the postseason the year before. Much more competitive teams. But defensively, Aiden Hutchinson has been a monster here early in the season, but there's been some issues in the secondary trying to get guys up to speed. Terrion Arnold, the first-round pick, for example. Going into this game, where do you think the vibes are at for the Lions defensively, particularly knowing what Geno Smith has done? And, oh, by the way, Jack Smith-Njigba is much better this year than he was last year to add to that group. What are the vibes going against this Seahawks offense that had been so dynamic in Ford Field the last couple of years?
I'll say this, Corbin, I was very surprised. I've been very surprised. Third down defense the first 3 weeks. You're talking Stafford, you're talking Baker Mayfield, 2 playoff quarterbacks. This past week, Kyler Murray, who's very, very elusive and certainly dynamic. But the Lions' third down defense with the brand new secondary, with Carlton Davis and Amik Robertson, and you mentioned Terrion Arnold, has been really good. And I know the Seahawks third down, JSN is the guy that scares me on third down. Lockett doesn't drop a pass. DK's really, really good. Charbonnet out of the backfield. This is going to be a fun back and forth to see how that goes. The Lions defense is so much better than it was a year ago. And 2 years ago when Geno put up a 48 burger on him at Ford Field. So it's an improved secondary. If Brian Branch, who's clearing concussion protocol, can play, that's going to be a big loss. If he can't, he's been moved to safety and has been really, really good the last 2 weeks. Kirby Joseph has had a nice start, and the linebacking core is deep. You mentioned Hutchinson, though. 6.5 sacks, the spin moves. He's going to go he's going to go on that right side of the Seahawks line and try to wreak havoc. He's a guy to watch. If he stays in his lanes and is able to bring Geno down, it could be a long day for the Seahawks. But I get a sense, too, that you're right. The way Geno is throwing the football right now, and the Lions defense has been really, really improved. Like I said, they've given up below 20 points and 20 or below now in the first 3 games. That's the first time that's happened since 93. So something will give Monday night. If the crowd should play a factor, it's going to be real loud and not as raucous as it will be raucous. But since they made the playoffs and did what they did last year, these crowds have amped it up even more. So it's going to be pretty wild.
Looking forward to it. I cannot wait for Monday night.
No, you are right about that. All right, coming up next, let's get some keys. How are the Seahawks going to do it? How can they win again in Detroit? And can the Lions finally kind of break the Seahawks hex? What's going to take for them to get that done? We'll do that coming up next here on the Thursday crossover. All right, folks, Locked On Lions, Locked On Seahawks, brought to you by our friends at FanDuel. You can start the season with a big return on FanDuel, America's #1 sports book. So when you get a hunch in the middle of the game, you can check out the latest stats, view live play-by-play, and so much more on the same page where you place your bets. And, of course, in-game parlays and betting on players and whatever you want, you can do at FanDuel. You get started with $200 in bonus bets, guaranteed when you place your first $5 bet. All of that can be done at FanDuel.com. You've heard Corbin talk about it on Locked On Seahawks. You've heard me talk about it here on Locked On Lions. It's the best site if you want to put money down on any of these games. It doesn't have to be NFL. It can be anything else. Again, FanDuel.com. They're the best. America's #1 sports book. Corbin Smith, Locked On Seahawks. Matt Dery, Locked On Lions. It's our Thursday crossover brought to you by PrizePicks. Corbin, give me some keys here. What's it going to take for the Seahawks to get this thing done Monday night?
Well, the first key, look, I don't want to, go for the low hanging fruit here, but you better have some people chipping on Aiden Hutchinson. That is the #1 thing, especially with Marcus Davenport being out. This feels like a game where if the Seahawks can find a way to at least somewhat contain Hutchinson, he's going to make his plays, but can you find a way to get a tight end chipping, running back chipping, both of them chipping, max protect, give Geno Smith enough time that he can get the ball to his receivers. This will be the best trio of receivers that the Lions have faced this year. So they're going to have to deal with DK, who is having a career year. Jack Smith and Jigba had 100-plus yards, 12 catches a couple weeks ago. Tyler Lockett is still Tyler Lockett. Maybe not the prime Tyler Lockett, but still a very good player. Noah Fant had 6 catches for 60 yards last week. But Seattle's got weapons after on offense. It's going to matter if Aiden Hutchinson's getting in the backfield every single play. So they've got to be able to do that. And I think getting the run game going also is a way to slow him down a little bit. Seattle actually has had over 100 rushing yards in 2 of the last 3 games, despite a lot of issues with their offensive line. If they have Ken Walker, the third back, to go with Zach Charbonnet, thunder and lightning combination, that can take some pressure off of that pass rush on Geno Smith too. Maybe open up some play action, which they haven't ran a lot this year. And then on the defensive side of the football, to me, it all boils down to turnovers. And I know that may seem elementary, but what has been one of the big difference makers the last 2 times these teams have met? 2 years ago, Reek Woolen, pick 6 on Jared Goff. Last year, Trey Brown, pick 6. Those immediate plays, and I'm not saying they need another pick 6, but they've got to find a way to fluster Jared Goff, get him uncomfortable, force him to be Vanilla Vic. I think Mike McDonald would love that if they get him moving around some, and force him into some rough decisions. He has made some peculiar decisions with the football early this season at times for a veteran quarterback. Can you speed up that clock for him a little bit? I think this is the game the Seahawks are going to mix in some more of those simulated pressures, because Mike McDonald's not done much of that the first 3 weeks, which has been stunning to me. Some of it hasn't had to because the pass rush up front's been so good. But I think you're going to see a little bit more exotic scheming this week from Mike McDonald against a really good Lions offense. Can you do that to coax Jared Goff into a turnover or 2? To me, that could be the difference in a game that I expect is going to be very tight.
Yeah, no, you bring up a lot of great points there. It's interesting with Goff. One of the things for the Lions, they've got to stay with who they are. I know this past Sunday against Arizona, Cardinals didn't have a great run defense last year. Their numbers were a little bit up the first couple of weeks, but they just went back to ground and pound. They went to David Montgomery. And what's really been interesting is taking place now, 2 of the first 3 games, Montgomery hits the hole, he hits the first defender. These Lion offensive linemen immediately run to him and start pushing him forward. There was one play this past Sunday in Arizona. They lifted him in the air for 4 yards. Well, until the whistles blow, you're good to go. So the Lions need to keep doing that, because that also will keep Geno Smith off the field, because like you said, his second home is Ford Field for some strange reason. So keeping with where they're at, their identity of running the football and doing it successfully is going to be important for the Lions. You mentioned the turnovers before. I agree with that. The 2 pick 6s the last 2 years. Jared Goff has got to take better care of the football. He was better this past Sunday in Arizona. Flipping the field, man, loud crowd Monday night. They've been partying all day to get to this point at 8:15 Eastern time. Jack Fox has been unbelievable as the Lions punter the last few weeks, flipping the field and making, whether it's Kyler Murray, whether it was Baker Mayfield, Stafford in week 1, make them go 90 yards, 92 yards. I know with these new silly kickoff rules and everything else, we're starting everything at the 30, 35 or whatever. But how about a long field for Geno as opposed to last year, where a couple times, like with the turnovers and even 2 years ago, he had some short fields. And the final thing is getting some pressure on him. I mean, my goodness, he picked the Lions apart. You mentioned the Seahawks weapons. DK's been there now a while. Same with Tyler Lockett. Get some pressure on him. He cannot get comfortable there early. And it's got to be somebody, Hutchinson, they'll chip and they'll double team, but a DJ Reader on the interior, Liam McNeil, if he's healthy, could spell some doom for Smith and force him to just get uncomfortable, because the last 2 years, he has just been way too comfortable in there.
Now, let's get to the predictions, shall we? And you, I'm assuming, do the same way I do. I don't give score predictions on Thursday, but I look at the spread, thanks to our friends over at FanDuel, and the Lions being at home, they get some home cooking from the odds makers. The Seahawks have the better record coming in, but again, there's a lot of people, and I get it to an extent. Who have you beaten to this point?
Yeah.
This is that litmus test for the Seahawks, but the Lions are still favored at home on Monday Night Football. Do you expect to see them cover in this game or not?
You said the number, as you and I are talking right now, is what?
I believe it's 4.5.
It's going to be close. I think the Lion fans, Corbin, are ready for, I'm not saying a blowout, but they're ready to see the Lions of old. I mean, even last Sunday against Arizona, they should have won that game going away, and they didn't. They won by 7. They were the better team. The Rams win, needed overtime. The Tampa game came down to the end. I think they're hoping that, hey, look, Seattle's 3-0 and playing well and well coached and well drilled. But it's time for the Lions to do what people thought they were going to do at the start of the year, and that is play championship caliber and NFC championship and Super Bowl caliber offense and really flex and get St. Brown going, get J-Mo going, Laporta, and put up a lot of points, but not have to win 48-45 or whatever. So, yeah, I like the Lions in this game. To cover the 4.5 is going to be tough because I do think for some reason Geno has a good feel there. And if Ragnow doesn't play, that does change things. Well, that'll likely come down to game time. But sure, I'll say the Lions will cover and win. I mean, Seattle, you guys have faced Jacoby Brissett, Bo Nix, heck, Ross Jackson should have quarterbacked the Miami Dolphins. That's an inside bit. So our friend, the host of Locked On Saints, that runs our network, it's not that you're going to see a real quarterback this week. But you've had his number. So what do you think?
I think 4.5 the Seahawks are going to cover. Now, I'm not saying they're going to win the game. I think that this is going to be one of those classic ones that goes down to the wire. And I'm going to go as far as saying whoever has the ball last is going to win this game. I don't think it's going to be the track meet we've seen the last 2 years. Mike McDonald will have an aneurysm if that happens. Like, Mike McDonald is not going to allow his defense to give up 40-plus points. Like, I'm not expecting that kind of a game. But I think late, whoever's got the ball last, I expect it's going to be tied or it's going to be within 3 points. And whoever has the ball last is going to have a chance to go down and win the football game. So I think as far as 4.5 points being an underdog, I think the Seahawks are going to cover that. The question for tomorrow on Locked On Seahawks is, are they covering it in losing fashion or are they covering it pulling off the road upset? And that's what always makes the Friday episodes the most fun here on the Locked On Podcast Network.
What a start it would be for Mike McDonald to be 4-0 and really cap it off with a win on Monday Night Football in a very hostile environment. But Corbin, great to see you. Thanks for doing this as always, my friend.
Thanks for having me, man. I'm looking forward to the game Monday night.
You got it. Thursday crossover brought to you by PrizePicks. He is Corbin Smith. I'm Matt Dery. Locked On Lions, Locked On Seahawks. Back again tomorrow on both shows.